I've sat in circles chanting, "All is one," until my voice went hoarse. But outside the meditation hall, the world still fractures. Nations wage war. Families betray one another. We watch headlines of greed, hatred, and cruelty and wonder. Did we misunderstand something fundamental? Because if all is one, if separation is an illusion, then why does violence persist? Why does division thrive? Why does greed grip the heart of humanity? I remember the first time this hit me. I was in a silent retreat, lost in the mantra of unity. My breath synced with the breath of existence. My thoughts dissolved into boundless sky. And in that moment, I felt invincible. I believed I'd glimpsed the ultimate truth. But when I returned to ordinary life, I watched the news and panic set in. How could the world be so asleep if the truth was so clear? This is the heart of the crisis. We proclaim oneness, yet act as though we're separate. We preach love, yet build fences. We bless generosity, yet hoard wealth. We hold unity in theory and fragmentation in practice. Perhaps the teachings have failed us, not because they're wrong, but because we've never learned to embody them. We recite sutras about nonduality, but our decisions come from fear of others. We meditate on compassion, but we vote for division. We declare interdependence, yet exploit the very interbeing we rely upon. So what's missing? Why does the world remain in chaos, even as we extol the banner of all is one? Is the teaching inadequate? Or is our understanding too shallow? Is oneness a promise we can never fulfill? Or a practice we've never truly tried? In this journey of 8 parts, we'll dive deep, the roots of separation, how fear and ego carve the world apart, the illusion of other, why them feels so real, greed as the refuge of self, how craving arises from the sense of lack, the anatomy of division, politics, religion, identity as walls. When oneness becomes platitude, the danger of spiritual cliché, the alchemy of unity, how true interbeing transforms actions, real-world examples, activists and saints who lived in non-duality walk in the path of one, practical steps from theory to radical compassion, so lean in, not to escape the questions, but to hold them, raw and unflinching. Because if oneness is to mean anything, it must survive our doubts, our violence, our greed. It must shine through the cracks of a fractured world. The story of separation began long before modern borders were drawn. It started in the very act of thought. When you think, "I am me," you've drawn a line in the sand. One side is you, the other is not you. And in that simple act, the seed of conflict is planted. Ancient myths tell of beginnings when gods carved the cosmos apart. Hindu tales speak of Prajapati splitting the world. Greek myths describe titans battling their own kin. Even Buddhist cosmology charts realms in endless divisions. These stories did more than explain phenomena. They taught us to see the world as parcels to be owned, fought over, defended. On a personal level, it's no different. From the moment a child learns mine, the first tremor of separation shakes their soul. They grab a toy, and in delight, they exclude another. They cry out, "That's mine." And in that cry, the echo of future conflicts is heard. Every us versus them in history started with a whisper. I am separate. I am different. I am lacking. From there, fear blooms. Fear of loss, fear of otherness, fear of extinction. And fear, fed by ego, turns into protection, walls, armies, ideologies. We learn this from our forebears, the stories of rival clans, the chants that praise conquerors, the scriptures that justified subjugation, but always the underlying beat is a rhythm of I and not I, of drawing boundaries in the field of stars. And yet, deep down, beneath that conditioned pattern, there is another pulse, the pulse of oneness. You can feel it in moments of awe, when a vast sunset erases every boundary. You can taste it in acts of selfless giving, when you forget who gives and who receives. You can hear it in the laughter of children, untethered by fear or ownership. The roots of separation are ancient, but so are the roots of unity. They lie beneath the bark of conditioned mind, waiting to be rediscovered. We wake each morning convinced that they are different. They think differently, they look different, they want different things. And in that simple thought, we fan the flames of separation. I used to believe I was separate. My neighbours, my co-workers, even my family were others. I carried a subtle wall in my mind. You on this side, me on this side. I called it safety. I called it identity. I called it sanity. But every wall I built also built isolation. Every other I labelled also became someone I could fear, exploit, or dismiss. The mind loves this illusion of other. It's the easiest trick it knows. Divide and conquer, not just nations, but our own hearts. Because when you see someone as other, you don't have to feel their pain. You don't have to hear their cry. You don't have to question your privilege. You can look away and maintain comfort. I'll never forget the moment I first saw it clearly. I was meditating in a busy market, ripe mangoes on one side, ragged children on the other, street preachers shouting at passers-by. My eyes were closed, my mantra humming in my mind. Yet I could sense the divide as sharply as a razor. On one side, abundance. On the other, need. On one side, smiles. On the other, desperation. And in the silence between, a voice whispered, "They are you." That simple truth shattered something, because it meant no one was truly them. No one was safe on the other side of the wall. Not the rich, not the poor, not the devout, not the sinners. We are all cells in the same body, drops in the same ocean. But the illusion is powerful. It weaves narratives. Us good, them bad. Us deserving, them damned. Us winners, them losers. These stories are recipes for violence, for greed, for bigotry. We cook hatred in the kitchen of otherness and then wonder why it tastes so bitter. And yet, when I dropped into deep silence that day, when I saw the crack in the wall of otherness, I noticed something else. Compassion doesn't start from understanding their story. It starts from feeling their presence as your own. That moment, when the neighbour's cry becomes your own, destroys the other, and with it, destroys the root of violence. But it's not a one-time event. The mind rebuilds the wall with every fearful thought, with every news headline that dehumanizes, with every self-righteous judgment. The illusion of other is not broken by belief. It's shattered by lived experience of oneness in action. So, how do we dismantle it? Not by preaching unity, not by waving banners, but by stepping across the line, by sharing a meal with a stranger, by listening when you'd rather judge, by offering help when it costs you something, and most radically, by remembering in each breath, there is no other. Greed doesn't emerge from abundance. It emerges from the lie of lack. Every act of hoarding, the landowner stockpiling grain, the corporation cornering markets, the investor amassing wealth, is a desperate grasp at an identity that thinks, if I own enough, I will be someone. I felt this myself. In the quiet of my practice, I meditated on enough. I examined my wants, from the craving for praise to the desire for comfort. But each want pointed to the same wound. I am not whole. So I chased possessions, positions, even spiritual achievements, as if each would heal the split inside my being. Greed is not simply the sin of the rich. It is the refuge of anyone who mistakes having for being. When you think, I am what I possess, you guard your status with the ferocity of a starving animal defending its last scrap of flesh. You see greed in headlines, but seldom in mirrors. I remember a period of my life when I judged the wealthy harshly. I told myself, they have too much. They are the problem. But my own heart was no different. My attachment to my practice, to my reputation as a teacher, to the image of enlightened one, all of it was greed's cousin. I craved approval, admiration, the sense of having arrived, and I hoarded experiences, retreats, certifications, endorsements, each one a coin in my spiritual purse. True oneness exposes greed's illusion. If all is one, then what is there to own? What can you lose? What can you hoard? Greed thrives on the belief, I am separate, so I must gather everything I can to feel safe. But when you see the web of interbeing, the dance of atoms, the flow of energy, you realize that hoarding is a futile act. You don't possess the world possesses you. Still, this truth is not enough. Knowing that all is one doesn't automatically dismantle greed, because the mind is cunning. It says, I know oneness, but let me just secure this one thing so my practice can continue. It justifies, I deserve it. It's for the Dharma. I'm special. And greed reappears like a shadow in the cave of every intention. So how do we confront greed's refuge? Not through more austerity, not through condemning others, but through radical generosity, not as a moral duty, but as a natural expression of oneness realized. I began by offering what I had, my time, my teachings, even my mistakes. I shared my vulnerability in videos, in talks, in cramped rooms with strangers. I gave bread to the hungry. I listened to the lonely. I forgave debts. Each act a drop, dissolving the fortress of my possessions. In that giving, I discovered a paradox. The more I gave, the less I lost. My identity as a giver dissolved. I became simply the flow of kindness through the field of life. Greed retreats not by condemnation, but by generosity. Not by emptying pockets, but by opening hearts. And each time you choose sharing over hoarding, you dismantle a brick in the wall of separation. That is how oneness becomes more than theory. It becomes practice. We chant all is one, like a mantra. We print it on t-shirts. We share inspirational quotes. We nod in agreement when a teacher reminds us of unity. But somewhere between the slogan and the sunrise, the words lose their weight. Oneness becomes a catchphrase, a spiritual wallpaper we scroll past without noticing. I fell into this trap myself. I memorized verses on interbeing. I posted memes of seamless oceans. I used the language of unity to appear wise in group chats. Yet in my daily life, I voted for division. I ignored strangers in need. I hoarded comfort while parroting compassion. This is the danger of platitude. It offers the illusion of practice without real transformation. It lets us tick the unity box while our hearts remain walled. The more we repeat oneness in safe spaces, retreat centers, yoga studios, online forums, the more we feel exempt from wrestling with it in reality. Oneness spoken is not the same as oneness lived. We can proclaim non-duality and still pollute rivers, exploit workers, nurture prejudice. We can affirm interdependence and still build fences around our comfort zones. The mind is clever. It equates repetition with embodiment. It whispers, "I said it, so I am it." But truth is not a label. It's a lived paradox. Oneness is not a concept to sell at spiritual markets. It's a remembrance to live in every cell. I remember a conversation with an activist friend. She railed against my spiritual cliches, accusing me of quoting unity while doing nothing to dismantle systemic division. Her words stung. They pierced the comfortable bubble I had built around my practice. How many times had I preached oneness while ignoring real suffering that required action, not just affirmation? Platitude kills urgency. It tells us we're already enlightened. Look at our Instagram. It anesthetizes the heart with easy reassurance. But oneness is not reassurance. It's a revolution. It demands we tear down old structures in our minds and in our societies. So how do we rescue oneness from the grave of its own banality? We stop chanting it as a lullaby. We start embodying it as a battle cry. We step into discomfort, into conversations we'd rather avoid. We challenge systems that profit from separation. We choose collaboration over comfort. Oneness becomes real when we break it down into concrete acts. Sharing resources with those the world neglects. Listening to stories that challenge our beliefs. Breaking bread with strangers we normally pass by. Voting for policies that recognize our mutual fate. Each act dissolves a fragment of separation. The path of unity is not easy. It's not a scroll through affirmation. It's a daily choice to live out the oneness we claim to know. And in that choice, the platitudes die. They crumble under the weight of genuine action. What remains is not a slogan, but a living truth. One heartbeat at a time. Alchemy was always about transformation, turning base metals into gold. But the greatest alchemy I've ever witnessed is one that happens inside people. The moment unity transmutes fear into love. I saw it first in a makeshift shelter on the outskirts of a war zone. Soldiers from opposed sides lay side by side in muddy cots, exhausted, wounded, human. One soldier, bleeding, reached across the aisle to hold a hand of the enemy. Their eyes met. Two strangers became one breath. In that instant, the boundary dissolved. Hatred turned to compassion. War's alchemy revealed its true gold. True unity is not a vague philosophy. It is lived in acts of radical connection where every division melts in touch. I practice this daily in smaller ways, in sharing a meal with someone I'd once judged, in listening without rebuttal to a perspective I feared, in offering kindness to a stranger even when it costs me time or comfort. Each of these moments is a miniature alchemical reaction where separation burns away and oneness glows. The process is not passive. Alchemy requires fire, a heat that catalyzes change. In Unity's forge, that fire is vulnerability. When I open my heart to the plight of migrant families, when I face the pain of those displaced, I risked my own security. I confronted privilege. I let compassion scorch old assumptions. And out of that crucible, I found new possibilities: advocacy, solidarity, action. This is why unity without action remains lead, not gold. The real alchemy happens when insight fuels courage. It is easy to feel a surge of love in meditation. Harder to manifest that love in policy, in protest, in everyday choices that challenge the status quo. I realized this when I refused to sign petitions and stayed silent in meetings. even as I nodded along to platitudes about interdependence. My oneness was theoretical. My compassion was decorative. True alchemy demanded more, that I step into discomfort, that I risk conflict, that I transform empathy into tangible solidarity. At first, it felt like dissolving myself, melding into causes larger than I felt capable of carrying. But slowly, I discovered a paradox. Unity does not consume me. It expands me. Each act of shared humanity becomes fuel for living fully in the world, while staying true to the non-duality I've seen. This alchemy is not exclusive to grand gestures. It happens in the quiet corners too. When you forgive someone who betrayed you and see their suffering as part of your own. When you offer a seat on the bus to an elderly stranger and remember your own fragility. When you donate anonymously to a cause you believe in and relinquish the need for recognition. These acts might seem small, but each dissolves a fragment of separation and refines the unity within you. The collective effect is profound, a network of golden threads, each thread an act of lived oneness, binding hearts across divides. In practicing this alchemy, I learned two truths. Unity must be embodied. It cannot remain an idea. It must move through hands, feet, voices, choices. True transformation is ongoing. Just as base metals require repeated refining, unity demands continual practice, constant willingness to face fear, to open, to connect. So, if you feel despair at the world's fractures, start the alchemy in your own life. Choose one act of connection today, and watch as separation begins to melt. In that melting, you'll glimpse the gold. I've studied texts, sat in retreats, and meditated until dawn, but theory only takes you so far. What truly convinced me that oneness can heal the world was witnessing it in action. The reconciliation of Mandela and de Klerk. In South Africa's darkest hours, two men stood on opposite sides of an unbridgeable chasm. Nelson Mandela, the symbol of the oppressed, and F.W. de Klerk, the final architect of apartheid. After Mandela's release, many expected revenge, but instead, astonishing compassion. Mandela chose unity over retribution. He embraced de Klerk, invited him to lead the transition, and implored a nation to dismantle walls of hatred. That moment wasn't mere politics. It was non-duality lived. Adversaries recognizing each other's shared humanity and forging a future built on oneness rather than separation. Their handshake was not a symbol. It was an act of alchemy, turning fear into hope. The story of Malala Yousafzai, a child born in the Swat Valley. Malala Yousafzai survived an assassination attempt for daring to learn. Her attackers sought to enforce division and deny girls' rights, but Malala responded not with hatred, but with a vision of unity. Education as an act of shared empowerment. In her speeches, she speaks of we, not I. She embodies oneness by insisting that girls' education uplifts entire communities, not just themselves. Her activism is real-world proof that collapsing the other barrier, in this case gender exclusion, creates fertile ground for compassion and justice. The work of Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese Zen master, coined the term engaged Buddhism. He taught that oneness requires active responsibility for each other and the planet. I remember sitting in Plum Village, watching him care for wounds, both physical and societal. He didn't just preach into being. He organized peace walks during the Vietnam War, inviting soldiers from both sides to plant trees together. By planting saplings with hands once raised in conflict, participants experience oneness viscerally. roots intertwining under the soil, trees standing as silent witnesses to a unity born of shared purpose, the courage of ordinary people in crisis. During the tsunami that devastated Southeast Asia in 2004, communities rose in unexpected solidarity. Strangers from different faiths, languages, and backgrounds joined hands on ruined beaches, sharing food, shelter, and tears. I spoke with a fisherman from Indonesia. He had nothing left but his boat. Yet he rowed farther out into the churning sea to rescue tourists he'd never met. That spontaneous compassion, offering life to those once deemed other, is the unsung anthem of oneness. It doesn't require ideology, only a heart broken open enough to see another as self. Grassroots movements of nonviolent resistance. From Gandhi's Salt March in India to the civil rights sit-ins in America, nonviolent campaigns worked because they embraced oneness. Gandhi famously said, "An eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind." He recognized that violence only reinforces separation, me against you. By marching peacefully and inviting arrest, protesters shattered the illusion that oppressor and oppressed were separate. They demonstrated that suffering, met with compassion, can dissolve the very barriers erected by hatred. Lessons learned. From these examples, 4 truths emerged. Oneness is never abstract. It is forged in shared actions, handshakes, planting trees, rowing boats into storms. Leadership requires vulnerability. Mandela, Malala, Gandhi, they all risked their safety to affirm a unity greater than fear. Small acts matter. The fisherman's rescue, neighbours sharing food, sit-ins at lunch counters, each equally sacred in dismantling division. Sustained effort is essential. Oneness is not a one-off miracle, but a continuous practice. Marches, movements, community solidarity, and personal choices woven together over time. These stories are not exceptions. They are invitations. Invitations to step beyond platitudes, beyond slogans, and to commit ourselves to living unity in every choice, big and small. We've traced the origins of separation, confronted the illusion of other, seen greed's roots, and witnessed unity in action. Now comes the final step, embedding oneness in every heartbeat. Begin with simple acts. Oneness isn't reserved for grand gestures. It starts when you speak kindly to the barista. See their humanity, not just your coffee. Offer your umbrella to a stranger. No calculation, just a shared shelter. Choose foods that honor the earth. Recognizing you and planet are one body. These ripples matter. Cultivate compassionate presence. Practice being fully here. In conversation, listen as if the other's pain is your own. In nature, feel the wind as part of your breath. In solitude, remember solitude itself is connection to yourself, to life, to all. Presence dissolves the I, and with it, the barriers to others. Engage in collective action. Oneness scales from one to one to one to many. Volunteer for causes that uplift marginalized voices. Support policies that reduce inequality and champion human dignity. Stand in solidarity with movements that echo the cry, "We are one." We heal the world by healing society. Honor diversity as expression of unity. True unity celebrates differences. See culture, faith, identity, not as divides, but as unique notes in a grand symphony. Approach dialogue with curiosity, not conquest. Learn from perspectives that challenge your comfort. This strengthens the web of oneness. We are threads in a tapestry, each color vital. Integrate non-duality into daily life. Move beyond weekend retreats. Remind yourself, your work, your chores, your conflicts, all arenas for oneness. When anger or fear arises, pause. Remember the shared breath of being. Practice generosity not just with wealth, but with time, attention, and patience. Let non-duality guide every choice. Build sangha of shared purpose. Walk the path with others. Form communities not around ideology, but around the intention to live oneness. Meet regularly to share experiences, challenges, and insights. Support each other's practice. Celebrate both breakthroughs and breakdowns as part of the journey. Together, we become stronger than alone. Embrace lifelong practice. Oneness is not a destination. Recommit daily, recognizing that every moment offers a chance to heal separation. Study teachings, but don't idolize them. Use them as guides back to direct experience. Welcome doubt, confusion, and failure. They are signposts pointing to deeper integration. The path of one is endless. Shine the light of unity. Finally, live so that your very presence whispers the truth. I am because we are. Let your life be the testimony that separation is a story we can choose to leave behind. And when violence, division, or greed emerges around you, respond with the alchemy of compassion. In this way, oneness ceases to be an abstract idea and becomes the living heartbeat of our world. Thank you for walking this journey. May each step you take dissolve another barrier until the whole world moves as one.